My name is David Steiner, and here again, that's me not using any of my stuttering techniques. My name is David Steiner. I hope everyone's had a very Merry Christmas, or for those of you in Britain, Happy Christmas. We're here today to talk about disclosure, which is a technique I've used and I use all the time now. We've previously talked about, my first video was on pullouts, and my second was on voluntary stuttering. Now we're going to talk about disclosure. The three have similarities in that they all help us get over the fear of stuttering. Pullouts does it in an extremely powerful way by making you actually want to stutter if you do it correctly. It's not at the outset an anti-fear technique. It's a fluency technique of getting out of a block. But if it's done correctly, you get over the fear of blocking with it, because blocking is not core stuttering behavior. It's learned behavior. And voluntary stuttering, though, it isn't as powerful. It doesn't make us want to stutter, but voluntary stuttering helps us get over the fear of stuttering. And now we're going to talk about disclosure, which is similar to voluntary stuttering in that it's meant to combat the fear of stuttering. It's not as powerful a technique as voluntary stuttering. Voluntary stuttering really goes at the fear of stuttering directly. Disclosure does it in a more roundabout fashion, but it's still effective. Not as effective, but it is effective. And how we do that is in a variety of ways. I always have my Stutter Like a Rock Star bracelet on with the NSA right here. And I always have a certificate, a framed certificate on the wall of my office saying expert stutterer. It's something I got from the University of Utah Stuttering Management Program. And I always find ways to bring it up if I'm meeting a new person or something like that. Disclosure is something which over the years has become much easier to do. In the past, in the 20th century, it was not. In 1980, I wanted to become a naval officer, and I got accepted into a naval officers candidate school right before I graduated from college in 1980. But the day that I was going to be sworn in, there were all these other questions I had to fill out. Had I had any kind of therapy? And I said, well, yeah, I've had speech therapy for stuttering. Oh no, we can't swear you in now. We have to send you back to Fort Hamilton to be evaluated. Now, they obviously knew I stuttered, but they seemed to be totally against my having ever been treated for it. So I went in, I had to go back to Fort Hamilton where they give the physical examinations. I had to go up before a doctor, and I was really practicing all my fluency techniques, and it was a short conversation, and I went in to, hello doctor, how do you do? Thank you for taking your time out from your busy schedule to talk to me. And I had every technique I was really honing in on, and I wasn't stuttering. And he said, well, you don't stutter at all now. I said, oh no, I don't stutter anymore. That was when I was a child. And so that's the report he sent in. Now, when they got back to me, the people I knew at the recruitment center said they had a really long talk about you and in Washington, and they decided that even if you don't stutter anymore, If you ever did, you can't be an officer. And that may sound odd nowadays, but in 1980, that was how it was. And so in the 1980s, later on, when I was in law school and I was interviewing for jobs, and in any interview I brought it up, I remember one time I brought it up twice, and each time I did, the two interviewers just froze. And there was another interview I had, and a year later, I didn't get the job. A year later, I saw the interviewer again, and we had lunch together, and he said, I was going to give you a call back to the firm, but I didn't because you mentioned that you stutter. Well, I know you stutter. That I could easily hear that, but I don't want to hear about it. I mean, look, I'm deaf in one ear. I don't go around telling people about it. Now, had I been farther along on my journey, I would have known to say, well, that's a false equivalency, because if you had told me you were deaf in one ear, it would not have helped you hear anything. But if I had not told you I stuttered, I would have stuttered 10 times worse. I wasn't far along to really grasp that yet, though. And I remember in the 1990s, when I was a younger person in the stuttering movement, there was an older person who had been a naval officer who had said, though, you could never talk about it, you could never practice voluntary stuttering there, you had to keep it a secret. I don't know if that's the case anymore, but it was back then. But that has all changed. Well, that has changed a lot. Still, however, I would recommend against the whole thing about, hi, how do I stutter? No one wants to hear that. I think a better way to disclose it, a better way to bring it up in a conversation or in a job interview, is if you could annex it to a positive thing. Like, once in an interview, there was some guy who had just been to Belgium. So, I was in Belgium once. Yeah, it was a great place. I had loads of fun there. I was there because I was a delegate to the World Congress on Stuttering, which was happening in Ghent, Belgium. It was so much fun. Another time, the subject of Australia came up. And I said, I had such a good time in Perth. But I said, Perth? Who goes to Perth? Well, you don't go to Perth, because to go to Perth, you've got to fly all the way to Sydney and then fly all the way across the continent to Perth. Oh, yeah, well, I was there because I was a delegate to the World Congress on Stuttering, and I was giving a speech there. And, so you bring it up in a positive, or if you're active in your local NSA chapter, oh yes, some of the leadership positions I have, I'm president of my local you have to spell it out. I'm president of my local National Stuttering Association chapter. Try to bring it up in a leadership or in a positive way, not just, hi, how do I stutter? Even though stuttering is not an anathema thing to mention anymore, as it was back in the 20th century, I would still recommend trying to find a positive way, a positive spin to bring it up. Bring it up along with something else interesting about you. That would be my recommendation. And here again, I do recommend disclosure. Now, what's it going to do for you? Disclosure and voluntary stuttering. Pullouts are something that will make you more fluent, because it's how to get out of a block. Will voluntary stuttering and disclosure make you more fluent? Well, it might. If you're the kind of stutterer who stutters more if you're nervous, less if you're calm, yeah, it will, because it fights the fear of stuttering. It makes you less nervous to stutter. If you're more like me, where if you're nervous, if you're calm, if you're alone, if you're in public, my stutter's always the same. if I don't use any technique. It won't help you initially. It did end up helping me be more fluent because I was part of the Hollins Communications Research Institute program. Now, that program, Precision Fluency Shaping, they teach you very precise, very difficult techniques which have to be done just right. Sometimes the fear of stuttering got in the way, and I just couldn't do the techniques precisely enough to make them work. And so with that, disclosure on voluntary stuttering ended up helping me be more fluent because I could do my techniques better. I'm not a part of that program anymore. My friend Paul Goldstein and I both left the program for the same reason. It works, but it takes so much practice every day. You've got to practice and practice it. And I finally said, to heck with it, I'd rather stutter. I still use the techniques, but I use them in conjunction with other techniques from other programs like McGuire and the University of Utah Stuttering Management Program. So yes, ultimately, disclosure and voluntary stuttering will help you get over the fear and to be more fluent if that's your problem. One of the old masters, Wendell Johnson, said, "Stuttering is everything we do not to stutter." He thought that's all stuttering was. Stuttering was all the attempt not to stutter. No one believes that anymore. And he fell into kind of disrepute for a while because of some of the things he did. Some of you may have heard of the Monster Study. He directed that one, which was very unfortunate. But I don't think, I think that some of what he says really is true. Stuttering is not entirely everything we do not to stutter, but it is a lot of it. It is a lot of it. And when we don't fear stuttering anymore, and we can get over those things which are not core stuttering behavior, repetition is core stuttering behavior. Blocks are not. Blocks can be unlearned. So if your problem is those long silent blocks, that was my problem most of my life, that can be unlearned. Well, thank you very much. I hope everyone has a happy new year. David Steiner, over and out.